AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
Welcome to Under One Roof MTL, where we are demystifying home ownership 1 week at a time. My name is Robin Flynn, joined as always by LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties. Hey, LJ, how's it going?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Robin?
Fantastic. Little chilly. Been cold the last few days in Montreal, but we're surviving. Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding of Fred and Martin Mortgages. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Robin.
Hey, Robin.
So let's start right away with our trivia question of the week because we have so many goodies to get to this week. So we'll start with the cookies as our first goodie of the week. This is brought to you by Felix and Norton in the Blue Haven Shopping Center, by the way, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The first person to text in the correct response to 514-790-0800 will receive delicious cookies from Felix and Norton delivered straight to their door. Our question this week, what does porting a mortgage mean? If you think you know it, 514-790-0800 and include your name. Guys, we have a big announcement coming up in a couple of days. The Bank of Canada's final interest rate announcement for 2025 on December 10th. What are we thinking? I saw some rumors they might increase interest rates. I've seen others suggest they'll stand pat. Is there any hope of an interest rate cut? What do we think is going to happen?
Who wants to start? Okay, I'll go.
Well,
It feels like we're in the eye of the storm. Most economists, and including Martin Spalding, I would expect absolutely no change. Status quo. I think it's going to stay at 2.25. The economy is stabilizing. Inflation is easing. The Bank of Canada says we're coming close to the neutral zone. And actually, on Friday morning, there was an announcement that in November, we added 53,000 jobs. So StatsCan says unemployment has now fell to 6.5, and it's the lowest since July 2024, where it was 6.9. So, sorry, it was 6.9 in October. It's down to 6.5 now. So I'm sitting here going, steady as she goes.
So I agree. I think it's going to be a status quo. I think they're waiting to see where all the dominoes fall. I think they're waiting to see what the new year has to offer us and bring our way and see really how Canadians react to these renewals, because we knew that a bunch of renewals are happening this year, but even more next year. So I think that really we're queuing up to see how everything's going to land right now and where that's going to take us. So I agree. It's going to be a hold this time around.
I was hoping a rate cut from the Santa Claus, like for the Christmas holiday, but I think I'm a little too optimistic. But I got to agree with Martin and LJ. I think we had a few rate cut in 2025 that really helps Canadians, especially if you have a variable mortgage or a line of credit. If we receive a bit of help from the governor of Canada, Bank of Canada, but I think in 2026 we'll have one or two or three rate cuts. But the next one I think will be a statu quo, as Martin says.
2 or 3 rate cuts in 2026. Does that mean that the economy is not going to do very well next year?
Well, we're not sure yet, but you have to take times to analyze this. What's going to happen. But I think Canadians still have a lot of debts, carry a lot of debts, and the economy is not as great as we think. And hopefully we'll get one or two rate cut, but three a little bit maybe too much. But well, I'll stand with two. I would say for 2026.
Okay, interesting. So there's a new survey out this week that I thought was interesting that most first-time home buyers don't actually understand what all their closing costs are when they buy a home. So I thought this is a good opportunity. Perhaps LJ, you can help with this. What are some of the closing costs when you purchase a house and how much should you actually budget? Because I do think some people are surprised. They've saved up their down payment. They know how much they've qualified for. And then they get to the notary and they're like, wait, what do you mean I owe all this money? So what are closing costs basically?
Closing costs are one-time fees that we experience during the process of purchasing a property. They are fees that add up quite quickly, so it's super important to understand what they're going to be, how much it's going to cost you, and they vary depending on the purchase price, the municipal valuation of the property, and it's on a sliding scale for a lot of different ones. So These include the inspection cost, which will range you anywhere from $700 to $1,500 depending on the size of the property. We've got notary fees that go from about $1,750 all the way up to $2,500, $2,600, again depending on the structure of the ownership that you're looking to do. We then have the adjustments where we're adjusting for prepaid expenses or prepaid revenue. On a revenue property, you might actually get some money back for the rents, but on a typical property, you're going to have to adjust the municipal taxes, the school taxes, maybe hot water rental fees. We used to adjust the oil tank, whatever was left in the oil tank, stuff of that nature. I usually budget for about half of the annual taxes in there because that'll be the most you'll ever pay in adjustments realistically. And then we move over to CMHC tax. So if you are putting less than 20% down, you are taking a mortgage insurance policy when you're taking this effectively. And all insurance policies in Quebec come along with a 9% tax. So you do have to factor that in. It could be anywhere from $1,500 all the way up to $3,500. Really depends on your CMHC premium. After that, we're going to have land transfer tax or welcome tax. And that is on a sliding scale depending on your purchase price. So overall, I say if you're buying things under $750,000, you'd probably be okay with about 1.5% of your total purchase price for closing costs. As you get into higher purchase prices, the fact that the welcome tax goes up pretty significantly, almost like a luxury tax, you want to start putting aside 2 to 2.5%, even 3% possibly, depending on the price. So it is something you really have to take seriously and prepare for because nobody likes surprises, particularly financial surprises.
So that money that you've saved up for your down payment, you almost have to put aside some of that money and then maybe adjust your expectations of the value of the property that you're shopping for. Because if you had, let's say, $50,000 for a down payment, you need to put aside some closing cost money. Maybe you only have 40 or 45,000, right?
100%. A lot of time I ask people, how much capital do you have for this purchase? And they say, oh, I've got $50,000 for my down payment. I said, great. Then how much do you have for your closing costs? Like, no, I just have $50,000. I say, well, then in that case, we have $40,000, like you said, probably available for the down payment and 10,000 available for closing costs. And I didn't even talk about moving fees. I didn't even talk about other things like that that usually do happen when you're doing it. You might still be moving with a few buddies, a case of beer and some pizza, but overall, chances are most people are looking to hire a mover now to help with what moving entails effectively, you know?
Well, yeah, most first-time homebuyers are closer to 40 now, right? So it's harder to find buddies who are going to help you move than it was when you were 19.
Plus, Martin has another expense that he always likes to throw in there, right? What do we
Oh,
call
that
it?
is, well, buying the ironing board.
The ironing board. There we go.
Oh, because you know what? Yeah, when you're a first time home buyer, you underestimate what it costs to actually set up the house the way you want it. And everything that you're going to need within that house that you probably didn't have in a rental property. So whether it's the ironing board, it's a lawnmower, it's a shovel, it's a snowblower, and then all of a sudden you go down to the basement, it's not quite the way you want it. There are all kinds of expenses. And if you're completely tapped after you've made your down payment and you paid your closing costs, you're going to be house poor. And often when Fred and I actually qualify somebody for a mortgage, we say, this is the maximum you're allowed. Don't use that maximum. Give yourself some wiggle room. Because if you don't have that wiggle room, you're going to be house poor. And as much as I like craft dinner, craft dinner 7 nights a week, there are limits to it. And then you know what? If you really want to go crazy, maybe it's craft dinner and a can of beans. If you're going to be living on craft dinner and a can of beans, but you live in a lovely house, it's all relative. I think that you always have to live within your means and you always have to have a little bit of backup money so you can paint the basement, you can buy the extra TV, you can get the ironing board, you can get your snowblower, and you get yourself organized and so that you're in your house and you're enjoying being a property owner.
Why do you think it is that so many Canadians don't understand closing costs? Is this an education gap? They're just not being told? They're working with the wrong people? Why is this happening?
Well, there's a number that we throw out 1.5% of the purchase price. But in reality, you really should have 5, 6, 7% so that after you get through the notary, after you've moved, after you've bought your ironing board, that you still have a little bit of disposable income. Because the last thing you want to do is start loading up your credit cards because then it's defeatist. And then you're going in the wrong direction. Then you're going to call Fred and I back and go, can I refinance my house because I've built up a lot of debt getting my house set up, and now not only am I making large interest payments on my mortgage because I went for the max, but now I've got all this credit card debt. What am I going to do? I'm going to start to employ, and then you take a step back and you've been living in this house for 2 years, and you go, I was so much happier as a renter.
Yeah, but if you keep renting, you're not building wealth, which is
Absolutely.
I encourage people to buy their first property, what they can afford, not what they dream to have. That I think it's important.
Yeah, yeah.
If you want to,
I don't think day one you should be hoping to be in your forever home. I think what you have to do is get into the market and start building equity. Use that equity to buy the next home, and so on and so forth, until you get to the point where you're in your dream home. Then you fully invest in that home to make it exactly the way you want it, because you want to stay forever.
if you want to find out more about what your options are, you can always get in touch with Fred and Martin at fredandmartin.com. Still to come, is now the right time to finally downsize? LJ will help you figure it out after we check traffic at the CJD 800 Traffic Center. This is Under One Roof. I'm Robin. That's Fred. That's Martin. That is LJ. Downsizing in Montreal. When, why, how? How do you choose if it's the right time? Can you really save some money by downsizing anymore? LJ, you are the expert here. I think for a lot of people, they are looking at the cost of smaller properties, comparing to what they could get for their property, and they're like, is it even worth it to go through all this hassle of downsizing? So what do you recommend when somebody comes to you and says, I'd like to downsize. I don't need this huge house anymore. How do I know if this is the right move for me?
I think there's two main components to it. First component is, are you ready? Mentally, emotionally. A lot of people have lived in their home for many years. They have a huge emotional attachment to it. A lot of people don't like change. So it's really, are we ready to rip off the Band-Aid effectively and make a move into a new property, new lifestyle, etc.? The second part that comes along with it is, are you physically struggling to maintain this home now? So is it the snow removal? Is it the landscaping? Is it the just cleaning, upkeep? All these things, are they really eating into the amount of quality time you might have for yourself, for your family, for your loved ones, for stuff like that? That's usually one of the main drivers that people say, hey, you know what? I really just don't want to maintain it. I don't want to have to deal with these things that come up. I want something that's simpler. And then finally, it's from a financial perspective. Well, what do you want to do with the funds, right? Let's say you do have this wonderful big house, and let's say you can sell it for, I don't know, $800,000. What are we going to buy after? Where are you going to move you? Is it going to be a rental? Is it going to be buying a $500,000 condo? Are you going to be comfortable in that? Are you going to be okay going from a 2,500 square foot home into a 1,200 square foot condo? It's all of these factors that kind of come into play. And really, there is no perfect answer. There is no simple solution of answer these three questions. You'll know for sure. But it's really much more of an emotional, are you ready to make this jump? I've worked with clients who've lived in a home for 49 years, the same way I've worked with clients who were ready to make that move after 20 years. There's everything in between as well. But what's the main driver? And it's always when we try and get to the why. What is the motivation for doing this? And understanding if you're ready to get your life into that next chapter, and then we'll be there to kind of help you make the moves necessary to make that happen.
So building on what LJ just said, often we have conversations with young couples or older couples, and we ask them, how much of the house are you actually using? Because when there were three kids in the house, obviously the four bedrooms were taken, your principal bedroom and a bedroom for each kid. And then there was the playroom, and then there was this, then there was that. But now that you're empty nesters and you're sitting in this big house, how much of the house are you actually using? And how much of the house actually has just become storage? And so when you're getting to the point where most of the house is just storage and you're paying heat, electricity to store furniture that your kids don't want, and your kids are not going to come back and sleep in their, in their Superman bed, it's time to move on. And I know that you get emotionally attached because that's where the kids grew up and so on and so forth. But if it's bleeding you dry on a month-to-month basis, then move out and get into something that's a lot more affordable, and get something that's a lot easier to maintain, that will free up your time and allow you to travel, allow you to do all the other things, as opposed to maintaining a big cavernous storage of a house.
I think one of the biggest barriers too, because I've dealt with this with some family members, is like you mentioned, Martin, they have so much stuff that they are storing in the house. And it's overwhelming, just the thought of going through everything. But there are so many services in Montreal that will literally do that for you. You can pay them, they'll come in and they will go through all your stuff, figure out what's important to keep, and donate, sell, get rid of the rest of it. So, if it feels overwhelming, you can get help. People can come, bring your kids in, make them dinner, and get them to go through their old bedroom.
So Joe and I downsized, and literally I was on a first name basis at the guy at the loading dock at Renaissance, because I was showing it every day. He goes, "Hey, Martin, what do you got for us today?" Because we had so much stuff. It was crazy. And, now we've managed to stuff the new house that we're in, but at least it's a smaller house.
Less stuff. Okay, so
Less.
LJ, somebody is, ready to go. They've cleaned out all their junk and they're ready to downsize. Are there any surprises that pop up when people start this process? Are they, maybe surprised by how much house they can afford, by how big of a property they can get? What are some of the common surprises that pop up?
Um, I'd say to be honest, nowadays it's really the when we decide how much budget we're gonna have, and a lot of the time the conversation says, okay, I want to leave X amount of money, or I want to gift X amount of money to maybe some of my heirs. I want to do an early inheritance because maybe they're struggling with the down payment savings right now, or I know that they've always wanted to do X work on the property, so I want to be able to give them a little bit of cash now. That'll leave me with this much money. What can I go buy with this much money? And staying in the same neighborhood, a lot of the times what they're gonna get is 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 pretty similar to the price point of what they're gonna sell at. There's gonna be a little bit of savings there, don't get me wrong, but a lot more of the savings are gonna come in the form of the time that they're gonna get back moving into a condo, having less space to have to clean, maintain, manage, all that kind of stuff. But from a dollar perspective, uh, a lot of people struggle with the fact that prices today aren't what they were 20, 30 years ago, and they remember what they paid for their house, and they can't fathom the fact that they're paying 5, 6, 10 times more for this much smaller condo than they paid for their house 20, 30 years ago. So understanding the psychology behind that and understanding that this is just where we're at. And again, you're buying into another asset right now. You're not just throwing this money away. You're going to be investing this now, and this will continue to appreciate with the market. You're going to still be in the market as well. So really, it's just a deferred gratification for future gains on you as well, and understanding that this is what's going to simplify your life. And ultimately, as you're getting older, a lot of people are chasing simplicity. They don't want to have to worry about more things, and that's what we're trying to help them establish.
So, for homeowners who are planning to downsize maybe in the next year or two, are there steps that they can be taking now to ensure that the process is smoother down the line?
I'd say there's 2 or 3 things we can do. The first thing is obviously meet with a realtor to understand what your home is worth, because that's another point where a lot of people are sometimes disconnected. They've heard that John and Susie down the street sold for this much, and I couldn't tell you how many times they tell me that, yeah, they told me they sold for this much. Then I look in the system or I look in the register. I'm like, they didn't sell for that much. They were asking that much. They actually sold for 5, 10, 15% less than what they told them they sold for. And that obviously creates a bit of friction. Like, okay, now we have to reset to understand what our home is actually worth. And then the second thing is start the declutter process. Because when you lived in a home for 10 plus years, you have so much stuff. And really, we have to declutter the home in order to be able to have the best market value, because buyers need to be able to envision themselves in the property. And it's very difficult to envision yourself in the property if there's a ton of stuff in there. So the earlier you start that decluttering process, because it is an emotional process for a lot of people and it's something that they don't want to do, the easier it'll be when the time comes to actually get the home ready. And at the same time, while you're decluttering, start working on some of these little minor repairs. That leaky faucet that you've left alone for the last 5 years, now it's time to fix it. Maybe get a pre-sale inspection done so you understand where some of the yellow flags or potentially red flags are in your home, and gives you some time to repair them before you're in the middle of a transaction and you're blindsided by them.
If you're not sure if now is the right time to downsize, you can give LJ a call and he'll help you figure it out. 514 500 4040. Coming up, is it possible for young people to get ahead financially anymore? We're going to ask best-selling author Jessica Moorhouse after the news. This is indeed Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin. That's Fred. That's Martin. That is LJ. We're with you until 1 p.m. If you're worried about your kids right now, perhaps not taking their financial future as seriously as they should be, maybe you're still trying to get control of your own finances. We're joined now by Jessica Moorhouse, the Canadian money expert and best-selling author of Everything But Money, to talk about how young Canadians can build real financial confidence and start planning for their future. Hey, Jessica, thanks for being here.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Now, a lot of young Canadians feel behind financially. I feel like for a lot of, my friends, even elder millennials, they're worried they're not going to be able to save up for retirement. They're worried they won't be able to purchase a property. Where is that pressure coming from? And is it even possible to build wealth if you don't come from wealth?
Oh yeah, I mean to talk about that first question, it absolutely is possible to build wealth without coming from wealth. It's a lot easier if you come from money, let me tell you. But for most of us, that's not an option. That's not where we came from, and so we have to really start from scratch and figure out what that looks like in this new kind of modern world where it seems like I'd say every 5 years we feel like, well, this is a very different world than 5 years ago, and so. I think the anxiety for most people when they're assessing their financial situation and they feel like they're being left behind, or oh shoot, I should have started earlier, really comes from the fact that the world has been shifting so rapidly. It feels like once you've kind of, sunk your teeth into like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, the rules have already changed. And so, I talk often to a lot of Gen Zs, and there's a lot of financial anxiety about home ownership. Will I ever own anything? I think often that comes from, social comparison, seeing people on social media that, have, hit some of those milestones at kind of the traditional ages, owning a property in their 20s or before 30. And then also probably pressure from their parents being like, well, I was able to do this when I had, we were on one income, et cetera, all these kind of stats that just don't make sense in this homeowner world, one income and we had multiple kids and we were able to buy a whole house with a yard. And then we look at our situation, we're like, well, I literally don't have $1 million to just, buy a property at 25. So is it me or is it just the circumstance? And what I tell everybody is, yeah, no, it's the circumstance. I actually just was talking to a friend the other day who was asking me for financial advice, as friends do, because they know what I do for a living. And she's like, "What should I focus on? Should I focus on saving for retirement or paying down my mortgage? Because I just don't know what to do." And I'm like, quite honestly, and she's in her early 40s, I would say prioritize retirement if you don't have that momentum going already because you're likely going to earn a better return. Generalizing here, but likely going to earn a better return on, your investments than property appreciation. She lives in a condo in a big city. But also, the thing is, what if you move? What if there's all these kind of other situations that we need to kind of consider? And it's funny when I told her this, she's like, that's the opposite advice that most people give me, or my parents give me, and other people in older generations give me. I'm like, yeah, because the previous generations, it did actually make a lot more sense to buy property, or it just made more sense to them. It was something tangible. It's something they could live in. And I know we all probably know somebody who bought a house in like the 80s or 90s and it appreciated like tenfold or more. I mean, even just looking at my parents, they bought their house in 99 for like 300 grand. It's probably worth close to 2 million. Not because of their savvy investment strategy. It was just that was the luck of the draw. And that's just how, but I think it would be unwise to expect that to happen to us because we have no idea what's going to happen in the future. So the best thing you could do is take a real assessment of what's going on in this current world and our economy and everything like that, and what makes the most sense for me and my lifestyle and what I want. And maybe it is, buying a property. Maybe it isn't. I see a lot more Gen Zs thinking, okay, maybe it's okay to rent because I don't know why there is so much shame around renting. There still is a lot of shame around renting. And instead of, spending all this extra money saving up for a home and all the extra costs that come with owning a home, and I'm a homeowner, so I do know what those costs are. It can be very expensive. I'm going to invest in, for my retirement in the stock market in that traditional way. And maybe that's the path for me. So long story short, it's absolutely possible to build wealth, but that journey may look very different for you compared to older generations.
When you're talking to your peer group, there's often a debate, should I rent, should I buy?
Mhm.
What do you think the biggest barrier to buying is? Is it coming up with a down payment? Is it getting qualified? Is it actually making the monthly payments? What's the biggest hurdle to taking someone out of renting into buying?
Oh, definitely the down payment. Because again, when we're looking at certain properties, you need $100,000 as your down payment, and that's it. And that just to even maybe get that 5%. Or I know a lot of people feel really uncomfortable getting mortgage insurance, so they really want to get that 20. And that's gonna, take you a couple extra years probably to get there. And also too, we have to consider how do we save for this down payment when the cost of living is rising, my rent's already expensive. Maybe there's job insecurity. A lot of young people are, concerned about what AI means for their careers when they kind of had it all planned out. Oh, I kind of see where I'm going to go in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And now, oh, you're saying that AI may just take my job and now I have to go back to school and retrain for a whole new career. So there's a lot of, I think, uncertainty and just the realities of just like how expensive it is to live anywhere in Canada, even though I know affordability is very different.
So, Jessica, what's your advice? Is it to take advantage of the programs, the FHSAs, the
Yes.
RFCs, and
I love the
FHSA?
FHSA. I love the and I think it's because it's very new, so people still don't quite know how beneficial this account can be, but it's very flexible. So I always tell people if you haven't started investing and you're not sure whether you want to buy a home or invest for retirement or both, FHSA, if you're still a first-time home buyer, is a great vehicle because you can choose to not buy a home, but still have the benefits of that account. You get the tax deductions. You can transfer it over to your RSP if you decide not to buy a home, and it does not affect your RSP room. There's a lot of great benefits, and again, it's only accessible if you are a first-time home buyer. So people like me, I can't get that account because I already own a property. But if you don't, take advantage. Why not? And then again, it opens you up to having more of that room, and then you still can access your TFSA. You can still access your RRSP, but it just gives you that flexibility for if I don't know what my goal is at that time, because it may change. I know a lot of people thought they wanted to buy a home and then maybe they got an opportunity to move to the UK for a job. And they're like, oh, I'm glad I guess I'm not going to buy a home here because I'm moving. So this gives me flexibility to do something with that money. Maybe I'm going to shift it for the goal of retirement now.
As you know, many Canadian will renew at much higher rate in 2026.
Mhm.
What's the first thing you want homeowner to do before the renewal date?
Yes. I mean, first off, having those conversations with your mortgage agent, your mortgage broker about what does that look like? Like, how much are we talking? Just so you can kind of get a sense and say, do this much in advance before actually having to make the decisions of what mortgage you're going to renew to. So you can start plugging in those numbers into, some mortgage affordability calculators to see how is this really going to affect you day to day. I always go a little above and beyond because I work in finance. But when me and my husband were thinking of, we sold our townhouse in 2021, bought our house in that same year, we had a whole, spreadsheet so we can really identify how more expensive is our cost of living taking on this bigger mortgage and what other kind of elements in our day-to-day spending will we have to maybe reduce or cut. And I know a lot of people are probably going to have to do the same thing if they see their monthly payments or regular payments go up by a couple $100 or $1,000 or whatever the case may be, depending on, what kind of amazing interest rate you locked in back in that moment. So it's really important to do that work now so you can not only financially prepare, but mentally prepare. So it's not a big shock when it happens. And the thing is, too, we're actually pretty adaptable human beings. We probably don't think we are, but we really, really are. And so if you do that work in advance, you can already start making those changes. Okay, we can, cancel that subscription. Oh, we were spending this much on takeout and stuff. Okay, maybe we need to change that habit months in advance of this mortgage renewal. So we already are like ready to go when we have this big higher payment.
I'd like to go into a little bit more of the psychological side of things right now. I always find that buying a property as realtors is obviously one of the most emotional decisions people are going to make and the largest financial decision most people make. And I know that you like to talk about the psychology of money a lot. What emotional traps do you see people falling into a lot right now?
Ooh, that's a great question. Emotions are definitely high, especially for people who either want to get into the housing market or are up for renewal. I mean, like you said, this is probably the most expensive thing you'll ever spend your money on, and so it is a very emotional purchase. However, when it comes to being smart with your money, we really need to take the emotion out of it or just like know how to manage it and maintain it. And so I think understanding what are some maybe triggers that, if it is just like having those conversations about what are we going to do with the mortgage renewal or, oh my gosh, what kind of property can I afford or what kind of neighborhood can I afford to live in? Maybe it's different than where I'm renting and I have to kind of make those, kind of mental shifts that I may not be residing in the same neighborhood that I wanted to. Just really getting to know yourself and some of the things that kind of make those emotions flare up. So then you can use your tools for emotional regulation and get yourself back down. Just as a personal example, when me and my husband were shopping around, and I'd say especially too, shopping around for your property is one of the most emotional things you'll ever do. When we were shopping around for our house, not only were we, figuring out like how to sell our townhouse, but also like, okay, where are we going to live after that? And I've never seen my husband so, like, anxious about something. Like, he's a very cool, calm, collected guy, but then when it came time to, should we put a bid on this property, he's just, like, kind of did an emotional shutdown. That was his, like, survival mechanism, and he's just like, "I can't make a decision right now." I'm like, "Oh, interesting." So there's something that happened, maybe just making a decision really quick about this really big, shift of money. He just, like, could not handle it. So I think getting to know yourself, and maybe if you have a partner, talk to them about that. Maybe they know more about you than you kind of know about yourself in those situations. So then when it happens, and it will happen, you're like, "Oh, this is what's happening. I always do this when this happens. Okay, so these are the tools I'm gonna use to kinda get back to that place of, like, calm and safety and connection." So then we can make a rational decision of, "Okay, we are gonna put in a bid, and it's by this much, and this is the decision. We're gonna feel good about it." Or, "You know what? I recognize that I don't like this feeling. I should maybe listen to that, gut feeling. Maybe this isn't the property for us. We need to step away."
Jessica Moorhouse is a Canadian money expert, financial educator, speaker, and the best-selling author of Everything But Money. Get a copy today. Thanks so much, Jessica. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wrapping up on Under One Roof MTL, I'm Robin. That's Fred. That's Martin. That is LJ. It's time for our property of the week. We're going to take you somewhere on or off island that LJ wants to showcase for this week. Where are we headed?
Downtown living doesn't get better than this. Welcome to 2100 Boulevard Saint Laurent, Unit 207, a bright and stylish one-bedroom condo in the heart of Montreal. Modern finishes, in-unit washer-dryer, private balcony, and access to a rooftop terrace with stunning city views. Steps from cafes, groceries, shops, and the metro. This unit is perfect for students, professionals, or investors. For all of you investors that have been looking for a building that permits Airbnb and short-term rentals, this is the one for you. Listed at just $299,000, don't miss this incredible opportunity. Call us at 514-500-4040 and book your visit today.
LJ, permits Airbnb. Is that something rare, or is that...
Very rare in the city of Montreal for two reasons. First of all, in Montreal, especially in the downtown area, there are only very specific streets that are permitted for Airbnb. This includes Saint Laurent Boulevard, Sherbrooke, some of St. Catherine, St. Denis. We're looking at major arteries are the only ones that are actually allowed to have the ITHQ permits. Secondly, most condo towers have simply outright said, no, we're not allowing short-term rentals. And this one's actually one that in their bylaws allows it. Now with the current municipal bylaws, it's June, July, August, where you can do any amounts of time. And for the rest of the months, you're limited to 30 days. But before this recent law change, you were allowed to do short-term rentals throughout the entire year, located pretty much on the corner of Sherbrooke and Saint Laurent Boulevard. You're super central, great for festivals, great for everything, close to the metro. So really interesting opportunity. And again, we'll see what our new mayor Soraya chooses to do with the short-term rental laws. But one way or another, there are not many buildings. To be honest, I don't think I've seen any other ones that allow short-term rentals in condo towers right now.
So does that add value to a property that it's got a permit?
It definitely makes it unique. And again, given the fact that not many buildings are going to allow it, if you've been looking to do short-term rentals, because if you compare the nightly rate at a hotel, there's Hotel Coco that's right next to it, you can really make significant returns on this type of rental versus our standard long-term rental. Now, again, it comes with more management. There's more work to it. But if you are looking to get into that short-term rental game, this is a great opportunity for you.
I think it'd be very good for investors, no? Like,
100%. 100%. It's a great one bedroom. The one bedroom's along the windows, nice view on the back street, and a cute little balcony as well. So it's not a massive unit, just I think about 450 square feet, but nevertheless, everything you need for a great rental.
So LJ, where are we going to go eat?
Where are we going to go eat? I mean, there's tons of options around there, to be honest. There's this wonderful Lebanese place that has some of the best pita wraps in the city. The name's escaping me right now. I believe it's Dunya, but it's on the corner of Sherbrooke and Saint Laurent Boulevard, so roughly 75 meters away from the front door of this place. That's where I got to go.
If you keep going up on Saint Laurent, is Dirty Dog still there? They do really good.
It's Dirty Dogs, 100%.
Dirty Dog. Okay, yeah, that's a really great spot too. A lot of fun. Okay, let's get to the answer to our trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton. Our question this week was, what does porting a mortgage mean? What does it mean to port a mortgage? So that's when you transfer your existing mortgage, including its current interest rate and terms, from your old home to a new one when you sell and buy around the same time. Is this something that happens commonly? Because I bet a lot of people who had those low interest COVID rates probably were hoping they could port those mortgages when they purchased a new property, right?
yeah, it'll be great if it could be possible, but A mortgage is linked to a term, which is if your term come to an end, you cannot really port it because it ended. But portability is not something that people use a lot, but sometimes it could work in your favor. Absolutely. And normally you have a 30 days time frame to port that mortgage that you have to the new property.
Interesting. Okay. Well, congrats to Pina in LaSalle for answering correctly our question this week. You win some cookies from Felix and Norton. That pretty much does it for us for this week. If you have a question and you want the answer featured on the show, you can email us at underoneroofmtl@gmail.com. In the meantime, you can also get in touch with LJ, Fred, and Martin individually. LJ, where do people go to reach you?
Check out our website, ljrealties.com, or on all socials with the handle LJ Aguinaga. That's LJAGUINAGA, or LJ Realties with an IES at the end. You can also call or text me at 514-500-4040. And if you're looking to free up some of your time, contact my property management company, the Plex Doctor, to take over and give you back your time. You can find us at plexdr.com or at 514-709-6397.
Fred, Martin, where do people go to reach you?
Hey, Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, but do we have one more show left for this season? Are we going to do a year-end review next week?
We are. That's a great point, actually. So if you have any sort of things we've spoken about on the show that you'd like us to dive into a little bit deeper, let us know, because next year we're going to recap 2025 and sort of set you up for 2026.
Because this season has just flown by. So if we've missed anything, please let us know and we'll address it next week. So
Absolutely.
to get in touch with Fred and I, best way is through the website, fredmartin.com. Our phone numbers are there, our email addresses are there, and you can actually book us directly through the site. So it's fredmartin.com or it's
Well, fredandmartin.com. But if you have a mortgage to renew in 2026, could be the great opportunity to reach out to us. We could definitely help you with that.
If you missed anything, you can listen to this show in its entirety on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. All the cool kids are listening to Under One Roof. Spotify Wrapped came out this week, and I saw a few people share their top 5 podcasts for the year, and Under One Roof was in their top 5. I was very excited to see that. For LJ, Fred, and Martin, I'm Robin. Have a wonderful Sunday. Stay warm, Montreal.